Hey, Mike Griffith here of AJC-DawgNation reporting live from Bryant-Denny Stadium, where I just witnessed Alabama absolutely tear apart Auburn with a second half onslaught like a few others that I've seen. The Crimson Tide winning this game 52-21 here in Tuscaloosa this afternoon. Obviously Georgia took care of business earlier today against Georgia Tech. Kind of figured that would happen and want to give our DawgNation followers here a quick preview, some ideas of what they can expect from Alabama. And we've seen a lot of Alabama this season. Obviously the Crimson Tide undefeated, 12-0, ranked #1, and they'll be a favorite over Georgia. A couple weeks ago we saw a projected line of 13.5 points. Not sure how that line will be affected by what we saw today, whether it be in Athens, the way Georgia steamrolled Georgia Tech, or what Alabama was able to do against Auburn today. But for a half of football, Alabama looked pretty darn beatable. It was only 17-14 in the first half. I think there are some positive things that Georgia can take away from this. And not that Georgia needs any confidence. We know it was 26-23, kind of a crazy 2nd and 26 pass last year that Tua completed, a game Georgia probably should have won. Georgia was the best team in college football last year. This year, I think Alabama's been the best team, and I think that even after today, their struggles in the first half against Auburn. I wrote down a couple of notes. I just finished listening to Nick Saban talk to the media. He said he doesn't know what was the cause for Alabama not to have the kind of energy that they needed. But folks, this is 2 weeks in a row now that Alabama has struggled in the first half. You remember it was 10-10 against the Citadel, an option team, but still, the Citadel was tied with Alabama 10-10 2 weeks ago. Today, 17-14, Auburn was down at half, and that was with Auburn having a 75-yard touchdown run called back. I saw some gashes into that Alabama defense that I didn't expect to see, and my thinking is, if Auburn can run the ball effectively on Alabama, why not Georgia? DeAndre Swift, every bit the back that anybody had on their roster here in this stadium today, and the way Swift has been running it lately, as explosive as he's been since that bye week, I believe that Georgia can run the ball effectively against Alabama. And if Georgia does that, that gives them a play-action game against Alabama. We know Auburn's run game has sputtered. We saw that a little bit against Georgia. Georgia, a better run team, will be able to move the ball against Alabama, set up that play action. Now here's the question. Can anybody stop Alabama? Tua today in the second half was absolutely remarkable. The guy was 11 out of 12 for 220-some yards, 4 touchdowns, passing in the second half, 2 within a 3-minute span to open the second half up. And that was really when Alabama took control. It went from 17-14 to 31-14 real fast. Stidham did hit a long pass, a broken coverage. It made it 31-21, but it was over. Once that Alabama passing game got in line, they were unstoppable against Auburn. Now here's the deal. Georgia has a better secondary than the Auburn Tigers. I don't think there's any question the way Eric Stokes has played since he replaced Campbell. I know Tyson Campbell still in the mix there at that other corner. Baker may be the best cornerback in the country, and you've got to like J.R. Reed back there and Richard LeCounte at safety. So a very good Georgia secondary should provide some problems for the Alabama pass game. Now it comes back to, can Alabama run the football against Georgia? They struggled against the Auburn front today, but folks, the Auburn front is pretty doggone good. I'd say the Auburn front probably a little bit better than Georgia is, especially you look at that Auburn defensive line play. It's outstanding. Now, can the Georgia front seven rise up? They sure did today against Georgia Tech. I mean, they absolutely reduced the Yellow Jackets to nothing in a way that I would not have seen coming, with all the type of cut blocking and option assignment. And earlier in the week, we heard Jonathan Ledbetter say, we're not going to disappoint anybody. They sure didn't. I mean, Georgia looked great. Georgia has been on the rails since that bye week, and it's everybody. Everybody looked in the mirror after that loss at LSU, 36-16. It was the coaching, it was the offense, it was the defense, it was the play, it was the whole kit and caboodle. Everything stunk except the fans. They turned out in force. But everything stunk, and Georgia went back to work during that bye week, and they've been dialed in. Florida took them down. Kentucky embarrassed them. Took care of business against Auburn, even with the league clinched. And then what they were able to do against Georgia Tech, and of course last week against UMass with 66 points. Jake Fromm's been a different guy, the way he's been able to dissect defenses. Now, what I saw from the Alabama defense today that's a little bit different. they're going to be able to get to Jake. They are going to hit Jake. They are going to put him down. He's going to have to get back up. He's going to have to get rid of the ball, avoid the sacks, avoid the turnovers. Wasn't extremely impressed with the Alabama secondary today. Saw some Auburn guys get loose. That surprised me. Also saw an Auburn running back outrun Alabama defensive backs. That surprised me. That's not supposed to happen to Alabama. You don't see Alabama DBs get outrun too often. And my thinking is, if Auburn receivers can get loose and an Auburn running back can run away from an Alabama secondary, so can Georgia. Georgia's going to be able to score some points. It all comes back to the Georgia front seven against the Alabama run game. If Alabama is able to run the ball and get that play action game going, Tua is absolutely deadly, and nobody stopped him all year. So my first look, my first glance, I wanted to report to you live from Bryant-Denny, give you an idea what I see, what I think right out of the gate. It comes down to the Georgia front seven against the Alabama run game. And if this Georgia front seven can continue to play as well as they have against Georgia Tech and show that fortitude, that toughness, that muscle, they got a chance against Alabama. You know, Alabama's special teams also very susceptible. You saw that today. Auburn was down 17-7 in the second quarter and blocked a punt and scored 2 plays later. Without that blocked punt, they're dead. It's over. If it's 17-7 at the halftime, this game it's finished as it is. I mean, Alabama poured it on anyway, but that blocked punt created life. And if there's one thing that Kirby Smart has stressed, and yes, I know today Georgia Tech returned to kick 100 yards, but if there's one thing Kirby has stressed, it is special teams. I think Georgia has better special teams than Alabama does. I think that's something that could create some momentum. I think that's something that could be a turning point. This SEC championship game next week, I don't know what the line's going to be, 9.5, 12.5, 13, I'm not sure. But I know this, if Georgia makes enough plays, can win the special teams game and not turn the ball over, they can beat Alabama. Now, Alabama was impressive. Again, the second half today was like none other I've seen in an Alabama-Auburn game. Tua and the Tide absolutely poured it on. But Georgia has a secondary that's not going to let that sort of thing happen. And they got some great coaching back there, too, with Mel Tucker and Kirby Smart. And if anybody knows how to beat Alabama, it's those two guys that have worked with Alabama before. So my report live here from Tuscaloosa. Just want to give you a heads up. Alabama looked great, but you know what? Auburn was able to exploit some things that I think Georgia will be able to exploit as well, as good as the Bulldogs are playing. That's going to be a wrap. You can check out my coverage. I'm going to put some video up of Nick Saban. Why he's not satisfied yet, big surprise. Nick did a little recruiting there tonight. Apparently there were some 25 stars here. He started talking about how great players play against great players and go to the NFL and blah, blah, blah. And I could just hear the recruiting tape playing behind me, right? So Nick with some recruiting today, a great post-game breakdown of the game, talking about his team, mentioned Georgia. Tua, I'll have video of Tua as well. He talks about the difference, where he's at now versus where he was when he beat the Georgia Bulldogs in the second half of that national title game. There really wasn't a lot of availability, but we'll start with Saban and we'll start with Tua tonight, and I'll stick around here Monday for the press conference, and by then the Alabama players will be past their 24-hour rule and they'll be talking a lot more about the Georgia Bulldogs. So check out DawgNation, follow me on Twitter, Chip Towers. I know some great coverage today, and I know BA was on here earlier tonight. Everybody have a great Saturday night, and SEC title game's closing in, man. After what I saw today, I think I feel better about Georgia's chances of beating Alabama than I did when I came in this stadium at the start of today, because Alabama looked beatable for a half. And if Georgia has that opportunity and gets a lead on Alabama, I'm not so sure what Tua will do if he's playing from behind and throwing into that great Georgia secondary. Everybody have a great Saturday night, and I'll join you again Monday with another live report from Tuscaloosa.